posted, and congratulations. And I guess we'll move on to the next caller, please.
Next up, we have Justin.
Hi, Stef.
Hello, hello. I'm all ears.
Cool. I just wanted to call in today to have you expound on a topic you touched on about a month ago in an interview, where you mentioned the importance of libertarians, ANCAPs, people into philosophy, the importance of them having real relationships with real people in real life. And I thought it was interesting because a lot of us are, kind of on the fringe with our thinking, and a lot of us are really good at being juiced into the internet and social networks and Facebook and chatting and stuff like that online, and a lot of people choose to live their lives online. And so I wanted you to talk about why it's important for people to have relationships in the real world with real people. Why do you think that is?
That's an interesting question. First of all, I'd like to thank you for asking me to expand on something. I don't often get that request, and a little shiver of semi-erotic delight shivers down my spine at the very words that you're saying, so thank you very much for that. Well, we, of course, eye contact is important. You can't really get that very well. You can, I guess, if you're Skyping with someone, whatever, but it's not quite the same as being in the room with someone. I think we hunger for contact. I think we thirst for contact. I think we know that as babies we need it or we die. It's called a failure to thrive, right? I mean, there's kids in these orphanages all over the world who are fed and clothed and kept warm enough, and they just die in their cribs because they're not touched. So we do have a yearning for physical contact. And so I think that's something which you can, to some degree, get. You can get, intellectual contact and so on, but physical contact, eye contact, shared breath contact. I don't just mean sexual, but, just in the same room kind of stuff is nice. But that's kind of how we're designed. And there's nothing wrong, of course. I do a lot of internet stuff, but there's nothing wrong with it. But I think we're designed for face-to-face stuff. The other thing that's the case, I'm going to assume that you're a young man pre-family. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very close. Very close to being pre-family.
Very close to being pre-family? Oh, sorry. What I mean is you haven't had kids of your own yet, right? Right. Okay. So when you have kids, what happens is there's this giant the birth is the supernova, and then the supernova collapses into the black hole, which draws every resource in the known universe into itself. You need a lot of help. You need a lot of support. You need a community when you are raising kids. And that's something which really can't be overestimated. You know that old crap, what Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village to satisfy my husband. No, wait, that wasn't it. It takes a village to raise a child. Well, that's kind of true, right? The way that we were, again, designed was, or the way that we evolved was to have approximately 4 to 5 adults around for every child, because children need a huge amount of resources. The average toddler needs the parent's significant attention every 3 minutes, at best. And that is something that you can do without the community prior to kids, but after kids, it's kind of necessary. Well, not you could do it without, right? But it's pretty important to have that kind of community. So I think that, and of course, after you have kids, you want to try and build this stuff up before you have kids, because after you have kids, you're not going to have time to go around building bridges and all that kind of stuff. And also, when you're in a state of significant need, it's kind of hard to build relationships because you're already in that state of significant need. And so, people can sense it. It's like, oh, so you just want to be friends with me because you need someone to help take care of your kids or whatever. That doesn't really work out so well. And so I think it is important, if you want to have kids in particular, build your community beforehand. And you can always, I guess, alter your community as time goes forward if things aren't working out or whatever. But I think that would be my my major argument.
Well, I mean, I think libertarians and free thinkers get the rap that we are just a bunch of nerds, geeks, or hermits living in our mother's basement, and we get that rap for, I think, good reason in some respect, because a lot of people do live in their mom's basement and play, I don't know, World of Warcraft and read Murray Rothbard in their basement, and they don't really come out because they have this online world. And I think, like you mentioned, the children thing, and that's important. But I also think we need to make a case that the guy playing Dungeons and Dragons in his basement should come out into the real world and should meet people who are also into Stefan Molyneux and also into Murray Rothbard. And I think there's a case to be made for that. And the last time you spoke about this, I think you were trying to make that case that, yeah, you know, technology has advanced so far that we could live and interact entirely online. We could probably order groceries into our mom's basement online and just interact in chat rooms and stuff and play World of Warcraft. But maybe that's not the optimal play. Maybe there's a better way to do things, and meeting people in real life and having real relationships and having a community that's physical is better than just being entirely a bunch of ones and zeros your whole life. So I completely and utterly agree with that, and I wanted to reinforce that point and say that, you know, you mentioned going to New Hampshire and working with the Free State Project, and that's a big community that is grown from people wanting to live around each other in the physical sense and be with each other in the physical sense. There's conferences that go on all the time, all around the country, where people get together and finally meet in real life. I've met you at Libertopia, and that was a thrill, and I love going to conferences for the simple fact of meeting people in real life. And so, long story short, I mean, do you see value in the guy getting out of his basement and going to meet people in real life?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I certainly do think so. I think that stereotype of reading Rothbard and playing World of Warcraft, it may be somewhat accurate. Um, it's certainly better than playing World of Rothbard, which, you know, was not a great game. I remember seeing a proposal for it in the business world. Now, World of Rothbard, of course, can't have a command prompt because he's an anarchist. Can't have a central server because that would be authority. So basically, it's just you have a computer, do with it what you want, and that's called World of Rothbard. A lot of people weren't willing to pay for something they already had, so I just want to mention that. So it did not go as far as of course, the investors and the developers were hoping. But I think there is that. I mean, the video games are a challenge. They are so absorbing. Do you know that the average young young man, spends almost as much time playing video games as he does in school? It's really quite astounding. There are 5 million gamers in the US who rack up more than 40 hours a week. And it's screen time, right? I mean, one of the problems with with black culture in the US is this TV addiction, right? I mean, the average Oriental watches about 21 hours of TV a week, and the average black person watches 47 hours of TV a week. But that's significant. I mean, that's important. So screen time is a challenge. I mean, even 20. I was just, because when I read this the other day, I was like, well, how much do I watch a week? Well, I don't really watch any during the day because I'm parenting. I usually will watch maybe one 20-minute show, or if I have not too tired, a 40-minute show before I go to bed. And so that's, you know, maybe 3 or 4, 5 hours a week. And I don't play video games that much anymore. I'd like to, but I don't really have the time, and I'd rather, you know, at this point, because time with my wife, given that we're, you know, parents, is tougher. I mean, it's much more fun to chat with her than it is to play a game, although the games are a great deal of fun. Everything that you're learning in video games is stuff you're not learning in the real world. And video games, of course, give you a sense of achievement without effort. I mean, fundamentally without effort, and certainly without emotional risk, right? So to play a lot of World of Warcraft, you can achieve things, like Pac-Man eating the little blips on the screen, but there's no emotional risk and so on. And I think the problem with video games is it does not help people learn how to handle emotional risk. There's also very little risk of rejection in a video game. Maybe your clan could drop you, but that's usually not the case. So there's a comparison that can be made, about all the things that you could be doing if you weren't playing video games, right? So like 6 months worth of video games, you could actually become a really good guitarist. I mean, maybe you do or maybe you don't. Whatever, you learn a foreign language, at least some significant basics for it and so on. So, I mean, but it's a mixed bag because I got into computers. I learned how to program computers because I wanted to learn how to make games, back in the days of the Atari 400 and the PET computer and even the TRS-80, the Trash 80 as it was called. And so I learned how to program computers because I wanted to make games. And so it's a tough call. I think if you want to do a lot of gaming, then you really need to go into gaming and you need to make sure you're not just gaming, but you're learning how to level design. Some people get jobs at computer companies, at the gaming companies because they make really great levels and release them and people know about that and all that sort of stuff. So there are things that you can do. I mean, fortunately, games now, you can't learn how to program them because it takes, hundreds of man years to make a computer game now. So you can't really learn to, I guess you can do some iOS games or whatever, but so, I mean, you can develop some good technical skills if you're interested in learning how computers work rather than just consuming them. But I do think it's important every time you sit down in front of a computer, it's important to look at all of the array of things that you could be doing. Right? I had a friend when I was younger who would go to his mom's every day for dinner. They lived in the same building, and he was complaining about not being able to meet any women. And as I pointed out, there are women in lots of places, but there aren't any at your mom's house. So, every time you go over there for a free meal, nothing comes for free, right? You're not going someplace where you might meet a woman. I met a woman in a restaurant. We dated for some time. I found her to be very charming. She was eating alone. I was eating alone. I said, hey, let's eat alone together. Why not? And we did. And so there's things that he could be doing, but he's not. He could have been doing, but he's not developing those skills because he's going over to his mom's place. And so everything that we do has options that are killed. Everywhere we go is everywhere else we're not going. Everything we're learning is everything else we're not learning.
Yeah, economists would call that opportunity cost.
Yes, but I think that we're not particularly aware of it. And of course, what video games do is they do concentrate the mind, for sure. In it's virtual combat, of course it does, right? It hooks into all of the old style fight and flight stuff that we have. But there is, of course, a desire to escape. I mean, the old mom's basement thing. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for that. I have a lot of sympathy for the people who are, quote, stuck in the mom's basement. I mean, whenever I put out a video about men's rights, we get this, basement dwelling, can't get laid, bitter, blah, 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 blah. All the usual shaming 101 comes out, which is actually kind of funny when you know it's coming. It's like watching a show. I mean, with most people, expecting a different conversation is like watching a rerun of a Seinfeld and expecting a different ending. It's just, they're not going to be doing that. And I actually have a lot of sympathy for that. I mean, gosh, to play a lot of video games and to have a strong desire for an alternate universe, well, that's a kind of dissociation, right? I mean, people who are being tortured are told to think, like, one of the preparations for being tortured is to think of a happy place. Go to your happy place, right? Well, that's because you're being tortured, right? I mean, if you're windsurfing and you love to windsurf, nobody says, while you're windsurfing, go to your happy place in your cubicle. No, I'm in my happy place. I mean, go to my happy place. I'm in my happy place. And so why would somebody need and want such escapism? Well, it's because they're fundamentally unprepared for life. And it is a desperately sad moment when you look in the mirror and you say, I am completely fucking unprepared for my life. And what that generally means is people have neglected to prepare me for my life. People have neglected to prepare me for my life. And that obviously means that there's a deficiency of love and care and concern and future thinking and so on, right? I mean, I actually got mad at this guy's mom. Like, so she was a single mom, right? So she wanted company, so she'd invite him over every night. It's greedy, eating of his future. Don't have him come over. Push him out into the world. But she wanted him for company. She wanted him to come over. It's greedy. It's destructive.
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to echo your sentiment about getting out into the real world and really examining your personal opportunity costs. And I'm not here to knock anybody's subjective preferences. You know, if they prefer to play a game online or something, and I prefer to hike in the woods. I mean, there's no right or wrong about it. But I wanted to let your listeners know that, you know, there are a lot of conferences, there are a lot of organizations that exist for people getting out there. If there is a burning desire, if there's something within you that says, I want to get out into the real world, I want to meet other people that are like mind, I want to have a community that's
Sorry
physical.
to interrupt you, but you're moving around a lot and it's making a lot of noise on your mic.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to let your listeners know that there are organizations out there like the Free State Project and like the organization that I helped co-found called Liberty on the Rocks that allows people to get together in the real world and meet other people. And if there's any part of you that's looking to get out there and start meeting people, I mean, there's no shortage of organizations and conferences and communities that do exist. So it's not a death sentence to feel like you've got to be inside and on the web. You know, there's a lot of things out there. So, you know, Liberty on the Rocks is an organization that has almost 30 chapters around the country, and these chapters meet regularly once or twice a month, sometimes more than that. And the entire purpose is to get people interacting and meeting other people in the flesh that have the same values and the same interests, and forming communities all across the country. So we've actually got one in Toronto. So I noticed that they just met on March 5th. I believe Tuesday, March 5th. They just had a meeting. So, Steph, even you could kind of drive yourself down the road and go meet some people at Liberty on the Rocks, Toronto. But I just wanted to let your listeners know that Liberty on the Rocks is available, and it very likely will be near them because we've got, like I said, almost 30 chapters across the country. And it's very easy to start one. So if there wasn't something near somebody that wanted to meet people, they could start a chapter and start meeting people. So, you know, if your subjective preference is to play some video games and to be online, there's nothing wrong with that. But if there is something inside of you that wants to go meet people, you know, understand that there's a lot of ways that you can do that.
Well, I
And you
would
don't
argue
have
that, sorry, I would argue that there is something wrong with it if you only want to live online. I mean, it's not the way to go. I mean, and I know what you're saying. Like, if you have a yearning, burning desire to go meet people, but I would say that you know, don't wait for your desires to come, right? I mean, work on yourself, obviously, and all that, but I wouldn't sort of sit and wait for the desire to come. And I mean, as Mike was mentioning, I guess employee number two at FDR, he met his wife, and his wife, you know, is not, you know, drove to a new place, new country to meet people she'd only met online. That was kind of alarming for her, and she did a great job. She, you know, bagged a great husband out of it. Woohoo! Good big game hunting. But you gotta make yourself do it. You know, I mean, you don't have to make yourself do it for the next year, right? But recognize the choices that you're making, that when you're developing online skills, you're not developing social skills. And most of the online skills are not economically valuable skills. I mean, unless you're learning how to program or something like that. But being really good at World of Warcraft, you are a passive consumer of other people's creativity, of other people's excellence, of other people's generative capacity and power. And so there's, you know, there's that old thing there's no time like the present. I really believe in that. I really believe in that. And I think what you need to do to try and break yourself out of these kinds of habits, or at least provide some alternative to them, is to basically say something like this. Where is this going to lead me? Where does this take me? What happens if I keep doing this? Because, I mean, certainly when you play a lot of video games or, when you go to mom's for dinner every night, you can look forward. I mean, you're kind of dealing with immediate gratification, right? Well, it's more fun to play video games than to do X. Okay, yeah, for sure, absolutely. And it's easier for me to go to mom's for dinner than it is for me to not do that, right? She's already cooking something. Why not? I got to eat, right? What's the point of ordering a pizza if mom's got chili on the stove, that kind of stuff, right? Or if you're living, rent-free in your mom's basement, so, well, yeah, it's easier for sure. Yeah, of course it is. Absolutely. And you could argue that, well, I'm saving money for X or whatever it is. I mean, if you're working. But you have to remember and you have to know that nothing comes for free in this life. Nothing ever, anywhere comes for free in this life. Either you're expanding the present or you're robbing the future. Right? Either you are enriching today or you are starving tomorrow. And
Right.
the free meal at mom's in your 20s, fine, go over for a free meal. Invite her over and cook for her. Just make it mutual. I mean, if mom's cooking you dinner all the time and you go on a date, my mom cooks dinner for me every night. I mean, what is your date going to think? I think I see where this might be going if I get married to this fine young man. Because you're not developing those skills of self-sufficiency. You're not developing those skills of, and you're not, like, your challenges are all artificial. We are built to eat problems and shit solutions. This is what we do as a species. This is why we have all this. Why we have all this great stuff. It's why we have computers. Why we have video games. Why we have houses, air conditioning, contact lenses, eyeshadow. We are adversarial to challenges. We're born fighters. I mean, you don't get to the top of the food chain by bending over and playing video games, right? You get to the top of the food chain by eating challenges and shitting solutions. It's like culture, right? So let me just finish the rant and I'll turn it over to you. But, people say, well, what's wrong with the Aboriginal culture? Well, because they get all this government money, they no longer have challenges to solve, at least the challenges of production and consumption at the very least. And so you need to embrace challenges in your life. Now, if you've had a traumatic childhood, you've had a difficult childhood, I get it. I really, really and totally get it. And I have massive sympathy for that. I've been there. I know. There's this avoidance of challenges and so on because you feel kind of exhausted. So take your rest, but don't take your rest unconsciously. Take your rest, take time, play video games, relax, put your feet up, watch a movie. Okay, enjoy. But get that you're resting to achieve. You're resting in order to achieve. You're like an athlete who has a down day. Well, you need to rest. So rest and enjoy that rest. But don't make that your permanent state. Right? We gain satisfaction from the solving of problems, from the application of our mind to the challenges of virtue, productivity, love, child raising. That's where we gain our satisfaction. The people who want happiness without solving problems want muscles without exercise. They want weight loss without adjustment of habits. It's not going to happen. It's a fantasy. You will not be able to be happy unless you are solving problems in the world. And solving problems brings with it all of these emotional challenges like rejection, like failure, like mockery. And when you start getting out of your comfort zone and start solving problems in the world, then everyone who wants to stay in their comfort zone is going to try to undermine you, consciously or not. So you face all of that challenge. But what's on the other side of recognizing that the virtuous life is combat with problems, and whether those problems are moral or productive or practical or scientific or so relational, whatever it is, whatever problems or whatever improvements you want to bring to the world, that's where your happiness is going to be. And so do not waste your life shoveling pixels from one side of the screen to the other. That is going to solve anxiety in the short run, like not smoking solves the anxiety of quitting smoking. Sorry, like smoking solves the anxiety of quitting smoking in the short run, but creates toxicity in the long run. You don't want to do that. Listen to your future self. Listen to the self that you want to be in 10 years and start building the path towards that. And reject the idea that avoidance is going to bring you anything but depression in the long run. And gird yourself for battle, my friends. There's a world to be saved. That's it.
Well, you don't know how happy it makes me to hear you make that case, because like I said, I want to urge everybody listening to go out and meet people in the real world. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean that you need to pack up your things and move to New Hampshire and be a part of the Free State Project, because there are many other locations and many other organizations that do gather people in the real world and into a real physical community. And like I said, I just want to make one more pitch for Liberty on the Rocks, my organization, libertyontherocks.org, to go find a community near you, because I helped create this community back in 2008, started in Denver, and it's branched out all across the country and into Canada, because I felt like we were getting that bad rap of being socially awkward and being video gamers and being readers that never left the house. And it was time that people got out and met other people and became more fulfilled by having a real physical community and developed those skills that you were talking about. And I think those skills are really important. I think it's a way to advance yourself. It's a way to be fulfilled. So please go find an organization that's near you. And if it doesn't exist, there is no harm in trying to start one. You know, the worst that can happen is that you try to start one and it doesn't work. So I know that part of the problem is that people are very risk averse and they're avoiding the consequences of real life. But like you just said, Steph, you can't spend your whole life avoiding the consequences of the real world, because it's out there. And I really want to encourage everybody to go out there and visit it, because it's very fun and fulfilling.
Yeah, and certainly the bad people of the world are hard at work. And, so we either work or they own us. Right? We either do the right thing or they end up owning us. And, that's not a good thing. So, and also, I mean, just to help out, if it's of any value, I'll be happy to commit to coming out to a Liberty on the Rocks gathering in Toronto in April. And so we'll publicize that. And, if people want to come out and have a chat, I would love to do that. So, I'll I'll make that commitment now, because I actually don't think I have anything on. It's hugely pressing in April, that like in terms of speaking or travel or whatever. So we'll do that. And, hopefully that will be some incentive for people to come out too.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll have myself and the president of Liberty on the Rocks, Amanda Mill, get in contact with the Toronto chapter and have them work it out so you can go visit. And anybody that's in the Toronto area, please come out and meet other people and understand that you can learn a lot online. You can learn a lot by reading books. You can learn a lot by watching videos online, but you can also learn a ton from other people in a setting that we provide, and that's set in a setting of the real world, where you're having a real conversation with other people in real time. And that's just a great learning opportunity. It's a great way to have a community build around you where you live. So again, check Toronto people, check out Liberty on the Rocks Toronto. We've got almost 30 chapters across the continent of North America at this point. And if you don't have one near you, there is no harm in trying to contact Amanda or I, Justin Longo, at libertyontherocks.org, to start one and start learning and start thriving in the physical world. So again, I want to thank you, Steph, for doing everything that you do and going on all these trips around the globe. I think it's amazing how many people that actually get to meet you in real life. And I'll probably see you in Libertopia if I don't see you here in Denver, because we're trying to get you out to Liberty on the Rocks here in Denver. So I hope to meet you before Libertopia, but if not, I'll probably see you again at Libertopia. So I don't want to waste any more of the call or take up any more time from the other callers, but I appreciate the opportunity, and I really appreciate your thoughts on people getting out there.
Well, yes, and thank you, Justin, so much for the work that you're doing to expand the social circles. You need a huge amount of social skills to change the world. You know, knowledge is necessary but not sufficient. Changing the world requires massive amounts of social skills, and you simply can't learn those online. You just can't. The other thing too is that if you're afraid of the world, and there's good reasons to be a little nervous about the world at times, if you're afraid of the world, then online is not the place you want to be, because all the games that you play are going to be about fighting people online. And also, if you spend time on message boards or even in chat rooms or in live video game conversations, are people generally nicer or nastier online? Well, generally they're nastier. And so if you have social anxiety, then the internet is your drug of choice, and it is definitely going to make things worse in terms of your relationship to the world. I think deep down, there's a part of us that has no idea that technology exists, right? I mean, no idea of whatsoever that technology exists. And we know that because people gain sexual satisfaction from pornography, right? And so deep down in your reptile brain, it's like, some people in the room are having sex. That means other people in the room might want to have sex. That means I should get turned on. Hey, maybe I can have sex with that person if she's having sex with multiple partners. Maybe, right? So deep down in your brain, the images don't translate into, well, that's just pixels on a screen. There's no sex possibility happening right here. In fact, I'm kind of moving away from the sex possibility with this activity. So in the same way that your reptile brain responds to pornography as if there was real sexual opportunity, our reptile brain responds to social cues on the internet as if this is our society and will forever be our society, right? Because we scan our social environment with no idea that it's ever going to change. Because for most of human history, our social environment didn't change. This is the tribe you were born into. This is the tribe you're going to die among. And so every time you expose yourself to toxicity, whether it's trolling on the internet or, endless fighting and warring, if you're not learning any social skills when you're playing Unreal Tournament, because you're learning how to fight. You're not learning how to negotiate or read emotional cues or learn how to differentiate good people from bad people. I mean, you're just blasting pixels. And again, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, a candy bar a week is probably not going to kill you. But whatever you're exposing your reptile brain to is the world. It's not the online world. Your reptile brain, as much as it thinks that porn is truly sexually stimulating, it also thinks that your social environment and your interactions. So if you're basically programming your reptile brain with 4 hours of fighting a day, it's going to assume that you're in a state of eternal combat, and it's going to react accordingly, right? It's going to shut down its empathy centers. It's going to raise cortisol levels. It's going to stimulate fight-or-flight mechanisms and so on, which is going to make it a whole lot harder to actually interact with people in a positive and benevolent way. So, we are programming ourselves with almost every activity. And I don't want to make, it's like I'm paranoid or, oh my God, I can't touch a mouse or whatever. It's not that at all. It's all to do with proportion, right? So if the majority of your interactions are sort of positive, relaxed, loving, and then you play half an hour of video games a day, well, that's fine, right? It's in the same way that our reptile brain assumes that the people we watch on TV are our tribe, right? So, I try not to watch, really dysfunctional stuff on TV because I get that my reptile brain just assumes that that's the people around me and will adapt accordingly. So I just be aware that there's a part of your brain that has no capacity to differentiate fact from fantasy, and be aware of what you're feeding it. So that's the other thing I would mention. All right. Well, thanks so much for your call, Justin. It's great. Congratulations on what you're doing. I hugely appreciate it. Much needed. Hugely valuable. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let's move on to the next caller.